Now, as you may know, I have been doing an experiment all year long. All of 2024, I've been doing an experiment, and it has been a big one. And now it's the end of the year, and I want to share the results of that experiment. Now, what is this experiment? I was doing a 4-day work week experiment. Yes, that's right. All of 2024, I have been working a 4-day work week. I have not been working on Fridays. Now, why did I call it an experiment? Well, I wasn't sure if I could make it work, right? I didn't want to call it a change and then have to go back on it. I was truly running an experiment. I wasn't sure if I could make it work because, I run a small business. I have a small team of part-time people. And I wasn't sure if I would be able to actually make it work and, also still support my family with this business. But it's the end of the year now, and the experiment is pretty much over. And I want to share something big with you. And that big thing is that it worked. It was not all roses. It definitely had some hard times, but I am planning to make the 4-day work week my new normal. I'm going to continue into 2025 and beyond. This is something that I want to keep doing because I think that on the whole, even though it's been difficult in some ways, it's had some really positive impacts on my life. And so I want to share with you what that looked like, right? I promised that I would when I started this experiment. And so I am here to make good on that promise. I want to share with you kind of what worked, what didn't, and how I'm thinking about things now. There were trade-offs for sure, right? But it is worth it in the end for me to do this. So I want to share with you first what was really hard about this. So, what was really hard was actually setting the boundary. It was so hard to tell clients who also have very busy schedules that I couldn't meet with them on Fridays, even if that was the only day that was available to them, right? And I got to tell you, I did actually make the exception twice. Right. I did make an exception twice. I wasn't 100%, right? Nobody's perfect. Setting that boundary was really, really hard, maybe even harder than I anticipated. It was also super hard to recalibrate my workload. I use this concept I call task realism. And this concept is that, if essentially you want to assign yourself the amount of stuff that you can actually get done in any given day so that you're not constantly just pushing things to the next day feeling bad about it, right? The idea is like if you have time to do 5 things tomorrow, then assign yourself the 5 right things. Don't assign yourself 25 things and then get 5 of them done. Because even if they're the same 5 things, in the first scenario, you're going to feel great. And in the second scenario, you're going to feel terrible, right? And I want to feel great. Right. So I had been pretty good at task realism because I have been working on it for 20 years or so. Right. But that was task realism for a 5-day work week. It's like I had almost built an innate sense of what amount of work I could get done in a 5-day work week, right? And calibrating that to 4 days was super hard, right? I'm a pretty efficient person, so I didn't have a lot of fluff in there, right? And so it was hard to figure out what I could cut or what would need to be delayed, et cetera, to calibrate my workload. And it actually took me about 6 months of the year to get to a point where I was regularly hitting task realism again. And that was hard for me. That was really humbling, right? It was also hard to deal with the fact that working less might mean that I made less money in my business, right? Um, that's just a hard fact, right? And so one of those trade-offs I was thinking about is one, is that going to be true? And two, if it is true, is that going to be okay with me? Is that going to still work for my family and for the business, right? And in the end, it was okay. It was okay. Now, I want to share with you the plus side of this stuff, what I really loved, right? I loved so much the clarity that came with having a day every single week that I knew I could schedule doctor's appointments for my kids, for myself. I could schedule lunches with people, like I could schedule stuff and I wouldn't have to move work around to make it happen, right? I knew that day would be free. And so when I was scheduling things, I didn't have to like look so hard at of course, I still had to look at my calendar, but I didn't have to look so hard and try to figure out, oh, can I move something here? I just knew there was a day every week where I could put that stuff. And I have lots of that stuff in my life, right? I've got a couple of kids. We all have normal doctor's appointments. I had cancer a couple of years ago. I still have a lot of appointments that come with that. My son broke his arm a couple of months ago, had surgery. Like we've had a lot of appointments. So like having a day for that stuff was actually really meaningful to me. Now, also having a day to sleep in where no one else was at home, like this was an absolute gift to me. Because you know what? I'm a mom, and even on the weekends, it's not like I get to sleep in and just do all, it's not like back before I had kids, right? And so there's just something delicious about having a day where you could sleep in without an alarm and there's nobody there, right? There's nobody there who needs anything from you. So that was beautiful. I also really loved having this intentional time this day where I could set aside to, hang out with people, to have lunch with friends, with colleagues, with my husband, even if he was at home. Just having this extra time during the week to devote to relationships in my life was also really wonderful. And then you may have heard if you're watching these videos or reading my blog, I spend a lot of time at the pottery studio, or I like to spend as much time as I can there. It's a hobby of mine. And I spent most Friday afternoons over the last year in the pottery studio, working at whatever pace I wanted, not worrying about the clock, not worrying about time. And this was an absolute joy for me. Now, why does this work? And, it might not work for everybody. And honestly, I just want to share that, like, I have a lot of privilege here and that I work for myself and I get to make these decisions for myself. You might be working for someone else and this is just not an option for you. And I totally get that, right? And I'm just sharing about what I did and why it works for me. So, why did this work for me? Well, I'm kind of an all or nothing person when it comes to my time, right? I like having days where it's just back to back stuff and then days where nothing is scheduled at all. I like having that spaciousness around my time, around my days versus like in the middle of my days. So this actually worked well for me because I was able to have 4 days a week where I was like jam packed full of stuff, but then I had 3 whole days where I wasn't, right? And so because I'm a segmenter like that, I think this actually works really, really well for me. I don't know if it would work as well for other people who like need more space around the things that they're doing or kind of need more time in the day. Um, that was okay with me. Like I worked Monday through Thursday from 9 to 5 or 6 o'clock, and I worked hard all of that time, and I continued to do so. But then I had 3 days off, and that was really wonderful. Now I didn't spend my Fridays just sitting around eating bonbons or something. Like I spent them doing things, right? But it was really nice to be able to kind of separate those things from each other. Now, what's next? Well, I'm definitely going to keep doing this, right? I'm definitely going to keep doing this 4 day work week. And there's something really, I don't know, really exciting in that once I realized I could make this work, I started thinking, what if I could flip it, right? What if there's a date sometime in the future where I could work a 3 day week? Like, what if I could flip the balance where I was working a 3 day week and then I had 4 days off. Now, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but that wasn't even something that was in my radar, on my radar at all before I started this experiment. And I think that this is one reason why experimentation can be so, so powerful. It's that sometimes before you try something, you just say, oh, I can't work. It can't work. I can't do it. Right. And now that I saw that this could work, I'm starting to think, oh, is there something even bigger, even better that could actually work for me? So even if you are not a person who 4 day work week, nowhere on your horizon, like that's just not something you could do in your job, are there any changes, big or small, that you would like to experiment with in the next year? In your own schedule, right? Maybe it's just blocking off a couple of hours where you're not checking email to do deep work, right? Maybe it's just starting with that. But what small change could you make in your schedule that could be an experiment that you try that would make things just a little bit better for you next year? I want to hear it in the comments. Now, if you liked this video, please give it a like so I know. And also, please make sure to subscribe so that you get this content in your feed every single week. Until next time.
Hello, video editor here. Just like she said, make sure to like and subscribe, as only a small percentage of people that watch our videos actually subscribe. And drop a like while you're at it. Thank you.